My name is Lacey. I'm 28 years old, and 3 weeks ago my father called me sobbing like a little kid who just skinned both knees. Ugly crying. Kind of crying where you can barely get words out between the gasps. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone, listening to this man, a man I had never once seen shed a single tear, completely fall apart on the other end of the line. And when he finally choked out what he needed from me, after everything he'd put me through, I gave him my answer in exactly 4 words. But we'll get to that. First, I need to take you back about 2.5 years, to the afternoon that split my entire life into a before and an after. Because you have to understand where I was and what I was carrying before you can understand what I did, and why I have absolutely zero regrets about it. Before we go any further, if you're feeling this story, hit subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Alright, let's get back to it. I was 25 when I got the diagnosis. 25. I know people always say cancer doesn't care how old you are, and I understood that in my head. But sitting in a beige office in a medical building off Route 9 in Westfield, Ohio, wearing my work blazer because I'd come straight from a client meeting, I genuinely could not process that those words were being spoken to me. Stage 3. Breast cancer. Tumor is aggressive. We need to act fast. My oncologist, Dr. Nora Caldwell, had kind eyes and a calm voice, and she kept pausing to give me space to react. But I was frozen. I was watching myself from somewhere above the room, like my mind had already checked out and floated up to the ceiling, looking down at this girl in a blazer whose entire life had just been turned upside down without her permission. Before I tell you what happened next, let me tell you who I called. I called my dad. My father's name is Gary Calloway. He's the kind of man who built his whole identity around being the head of the household, not in a warm, protective way, but in that cold, quiet, stubborn way where everyone around him just adjusts. Nobody argues with Gary. Nobody questions Gary. You just learn to make yourself smaller so there's enough room for his expectations. My brother Tyler is 2 years younger than me. And from the time we were kids, the difference in how our parents treated us was so obvious it was almost funny. Almost. Tyler got a full college ride, not a scholarship, not financial aid. Dad just wrote the check. I was told, and I'm quoting here, that girls tend to find their footing differently, which was my father's way of saying he wasn't paying for my degree. I took out $79,000 in student loans and worked 25 hours a week through college to pay rent. Tyler had his laundry done by our mom until he was 23. When Tyler landed his first real job, Dad threw a backyard cookout with a custom cake. When I got promoted to senior account manager at my marketing firm in Westfield, my mom sent me a thumbs-up gif. One gif. That was it. And by the time I got my diagnosis, the entire Calloway family had been completely consumed, like a black hole swallowing everything in its orbit, by Tyler's upcoming wedding. Tyler was marrying a woman named Brooke. She was perfectly pleasant, perfectly put together, perfectly willing to spend 14 months planning a single party. My mom had multiple wedding mood boards. My dad had already written a check for $65,000 toward the event and talked about it like he was funding a moon landing. The wedding was scheduled for September. My diagnosis came in March. I walked out of Dr. Caldwell's office and sat down on a bench in the hallway of the medical building. There were fake plants in the corner. Motivational wall art that said something about strength. I stared at it for a while without reading it. My hands were shaking when I finally unlocked my phone. I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring, which surprised me. He sounded distracted, annoyed. Calloway. Dad. My voice cracked just on that one word. Just his name. I just left the doctor. I have cancer, Dad. Stage 3. They want to start chemo right away. I'm really scared. Silence. I kept going, filling the silence because it scared me. I don't know what to do. The doctor said it's aggressive and... Hold on. His voice was clipped. What kind of cancer? Breast cancer. Stage 3. More silence. I could hear the TV in the background. Some sports channel. I remember thinking, he's watching TV right now. I'm telling him I might be dying and he's watching TV. Dad, did you hear me? And then he said it. The sentence I have replayed in my head probably 10,000 times since. Lacey, listen, your mother and I are buried right now. Tyler's got the venue deposit due this week and we're dealing with the caterer situation. We can't really take this on right now. You're strong. You've always figured things out on your own. You'll get through this. I felt my whole chest cave in. Okay, I said. 'Cause what else do you say to that? Call your doctor and get a plan together. You'll be fine. And he hung up. I sat on that bench for almost an hour. People walked by, nurses, patients, a guy with a coffee cart. Nobody stopped. I was just another person in a hallway having the worst day of their life, and the world didn't even blink. I took a screenshot of my call log. 9:47 a.m. duration, 2 minutes, 12 seconds. I saved it to a folder I titled Records. I didn't know why. Some quiet survival instinct, maybe. Or maybe part of me already understood I'd need it someday. Chemo Center at Westfield General was on the 3rd floor. A circle of reclining chairs with 4 stands and little personal TVs on adjustable arms. Smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. My first session, I checked in alone, got assigned to chair 5, and sat down while a nurse named Deb with reading glasses on a beaded chain started my port. She had the energy of someone who had done this 1,000 times but still gave it all her heart. She asked if I'd brought someone with me. I looked around. Chair 2 had a woman whose husband was feeding her crackers and making her laugh. Chair 7 had a teenage boy whose dad sat next to him the entire session with his hand on his shoulder, not saying anything, just there. Chair 9 had an older woman with her 3 adult daughters crowded around her like a warm wall. Chair 5 had me. I'm fine on my own, I told Deb. She gave me a look that said she'd heard that before and didn't believe it, but she was kind enough not to push. I texted my mom that morning, starting chemo today. Terrified. Wish someone was here. She responded 4 hours later. I'd already driven myself home and was curled up on my bathroom floor. Her message said, hang in there. We're at the florist with Brooke. Ivory roses or garden peonies for the centerpieces. You have good taste, what do you think? I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, roses are beautiful. I didn't tell her I'd had to pull over twice on the way home because the nausea was so bad I couldn't see straight. I didn't tell her I'd cried so hard in the car that I gave myself a headache. I didn't tell her any of it. What was the point? Over the next 6 months, I drove myself to 34 chemotherapy sessions. Every single one. Alone. I lost my hair in the 6th week. Not gradually, but all at once, the way they warn you it might happen. I woke up one Tuesday to a pillow covered in hair and I just sat there on the edge of my bed staring at it for 20 minutes before I had the capacity to do anything else. I asked my dad once for a loan. The medical bills had stacked up in a way that made my stomach drop every time I opened the mailbox. My insurance covered a lot, but a lot isn't everything. After copays, deductibles, and the medications my insurance flat out refused to cover, which is just their way of saying you're on your own, I was looking at about $52,000 out of pocket. $52,000. I'd sold my car, canceled every subscription, every comfort, every small luxury. I was eating rice and beans and whatever was on sale at the grocery store, and it still wasn't enough. So I asked my dad. His response took 3 hours to come through. We just put down a big deposit on Tyler's wedding, huh? Money is tight right now. Have you looked into a personal loan? Your credit is probably decent. Tyler's wedding had a $65,000 budget. My survival cost $52,000. And my father told me to get a loan. I screenshot that too. Added it to the folder. Then I called the bank and took out a loan at 13% interest. 'Cause I wanted to live. And I was going to have to fight for that on my own. In August, 2 months before Tyler's wedding, my father called. It was one of his rare calls. I picked up with that stupid little flutter of hope that I could never quite kill, no matter how many times it got crushed. He got right to it. "We've been thinking about the wedding, Lacey. And your mother, and I feel like, given everything, it might be best if you sat this one out." I didn't say anything. "You know. You've lost weight. The hair situation. Tyler and Brooke want the day to be, you know how weddings are. They don't want anything overshadowing the celebration. Anything." He meant me. His daughter with cancer was the anything that might overshadow the celebration. "I understand," I said. And I hung up and didn't speak to him again for 2.5 years. The wedding happened in September. I saw the photos on social media from my apartment couch, wrapped in a blanket somewhere between round 3 and round 4 of chemo. My mom posted a picture of the whole family in front of a floral arch, $65,000 of flowers and fabric and catered food, everyone smiling like nothing was wrong anywhere in the world. Caption said, "The best day of our lives. Our family is complete." I screenshot it, added it to the folder. Then I logged off and didn't go back for months. The worst night came after round 4. I'm not going to sugarcoat this part because I think it's important you understand what going through chemo alone actually means when you're doing it without a single person in your corner. It was 2:30 in the morning. I've been sick since 7. Kind of sick where your whole body is rejecting itself, where you're shaking so hard your teeth knock together, where you crawl to the bathroom because standing isn't an option. I'd lost what little I'd managed to eat. Then I kept going anyway, dry heaving until there was nothing left but the effort. And then I called my mom. 8 rings. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called a 3rd time. Nothing. I sat on my bathroom floor with my phone pressed against my chest and I thought, is this it? Is this how it ends? Alone on a tile floor in the middle of the night? 3 a.m. I texted a coworker I'd become unexpectedly close with, a woman named Jess, who worked in our Chicago satellite office and had reached out when she'd heard I was sick. "I think I need help," I typed. She called me immediately. Talked to me for 45 minutes. Helped me focus on breathing, on getting through the next 5 minutes, then the next. She couldn't physically be there. She was 4 hours away, but she stayed on the phone until I told her I was okay enough to sleep. My mom called back the next morning at 10:15. "Oh honey, I had my phone on silent. Brooke's bridal shower was last night and I didn't want it going off during the speeches. What did you need?" I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. No eyebrows. Barely any eyelashes. 30 pounds lighter than I'd been a year ago. "Nothing, Mom," I said. "It was nothing." "'Kay. Well, call any time. Love you." She hung up. I screenshot the call log. Both calls. The one at 2:30 a.m. with 8 rings and no answer. The call back at 10:15 the morning after. Added it to the folder. I want you to picture the moment Dr. Caldwell said the words to me. "No evidence of disease, Lacey. You did it." I sat in her office for a few seconds, completely still, and then I started laughing. Just laughing, out of nowhere, like my body didn't know what else to do with the relief. Then I cried in the parking garage for 40 minutes. Not sad crying. Not exactly happy crying. Just release. Like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years straight and someone finally told me I was allowed to exhale. I had rebuilt my life from almost nothing. I'd been promoted to marketing director at my firm. Turns out almost dying gives you a kind of focus and boldness that makes you really, really good at your job. My boss, a straight-talking woman named Karen Voss, had kept my position open during treatment and never made me feel like a burden. "You're good at what you do," she told me once. "That doesn't just disappear because you got sick." I'd moved. Sold my old apartment and bought a little condo in the Harrison Park neighborhood. Nothing huge, but it had big south-facing windows and a kitchen I actually cooked in. I'd bought myself a deep green cashmere wrap as a 1-year emission gift to myself. It was the most expensive non-medical thing I'd owned in 2 years, and every time I wore it I thought, I earned this. I had Jess, who'd become one of my best friends even though we'd started as co-workers. We did video calls twice a week, and she flew to Westfield for my 2-year remission check. I had a small, tight circle of people who showed up, who texted back, who brought soup, who sat with me. I had a life. A good one. One I'd built myself. And then my father called. It was a Wednesday evening. I was making dinner, pan-seared chicken, roasted sweet potatoes, the kind of meal I cooked now because I'd learned during chemo that controlling what I ate was one of the few things that made me feel like myself. My phone lit up on the counter. Dad mobile. I stared at it. Chicken sizzled. The phone kept buzzing. My first instinct was to let it go. I'd gotten very good at letting things go. But something made me answer. Curiosity, maybe. Or that stubborn piece of me that had never fully given up. Hello? Lacey. His voice was wrong. Thin. Uncertain. My father had never sounded uncertain in his life. Dad. What's going on? A long pause. I heard my mom's voice somewhere in the background, muffled. I've been diagnosed with something. Another pause. ALS. Early stage. The doctors are still assessing how fast it'll progress. ALS. I knew what that meant. It's a disease that slowly shuts your body down. Your muscles stop working one by one until even breathing becomes a fight. I'd looked it up once before for a work project. I knew exactly what it meant. I'm sorry, Dad, I said. And I meant it. Whatever he'd done to me, I meant it. I need my family around me right now. There's a dinner Sunday. Your mother, Tyler, and Brooke are coming. I want you there. We need to talk about the future. The future. As if I hadn't spent 2.5 years building one without him. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll be there. After I hung up, I stood at my stove for a long time. Chicken had started to stick. I turned the burner off and just stood there. He hadn't asked if I was okay. He hadn't asked if I was still in remission. He hadn't said, God, Lacey, I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you were sick. He hadn't said, I've thought about you every day for 2 years and I regret everything. He had simply said, I need my family. Be there Sunday. I opened my phone. I scrolled through the folder I hadn't looked at in months. The screenshots. Call logs. The hospital visitor records, a document I'd requested from Westfield General 3 separate times over the course of my treatment, adding to it each time. 34 chemo sessions. Every day, every time. And one column labeled visitors signed in that said the same word next to my name over and over. None. 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 I called Jess. Are you going? She asked. I need to see what they actually want. And I need them to say it out loud to my face. Lacey. Her voice was careful. Don't let them do to you what they did before. They won't, I said. And I meant that too. I got dressed carefully like I was putting on armor. I looked healthy. I looked successful. I looked like a woman who had walked through fire and come out standing. My parents' house was a large colonial in Newton Falls, about 40 minutes from my condo. 3 floors, a perfectly kept lawn, a wraparound porch my mother had spent 3 summers decorating. I'd grown up in that house. I'd never quite felt like I belonged to it. I sat in my car in the driveway for 5 minutes, watching warm light pour through the dining room windows. I could see shapes moving inside. Mom probably setting out the good dishes. Even a night like this one called for the fancy dishes. My phone buzzed. Jess, you've survived things these people can't even imagine. You've got this. She was right. I got out of the car. My mom answered the door before I even knocked, like she'd been watching. She pulled me into a hug immediately, that same perfume she'd worn my entire life, the one that always made me feel like a little kid again, and said, Lacey, you look wonderful. She had tears in her eyes. I wasn't sure what to do with that. Inside, the dining room was exactly as I remembered. The long mahogany table, crystal chandelier, the family photos lined up in order along the wall, and I noticed for the first time where they stopped. There was Tyler's college graduation, Tyler's engagement party, Tyler's wedding, and me, frozen at 17 in a homecoming dress, the last photo anyone had bothered to take of me in frame. Tyler stood and hugged me when I came in. He felt different, heavier, softer, like a man who'd settled into comfort. "You look great, Lacey," he said, and then his eyes flicked to my hair, which had grown back, though shorter and a little different in texture than before, and he had enough sense not to comment. Brooke sat at the table, her hands resting on a very visible baby bump. She looked up at me, and something in her expression was hard to read. Not hostile, more like watchful, like she was seeing a play she'd been warned about. And then there was my father. He sat at the head of the table. He'd always sat at the head of the table. But something was different. He looked smaller somehow, the way people look when a big thing is happening to their body that their pride hasn't caught up with yet. His left hand rested on the tablecloth and there was a tremor in it, subtle but there. When his eyes met mine, I saw something I'd never seen in them before. Fear. "Sit down, Lacey," he said. His voice was still trying to be commanding, still reaching for that old authority. "We have things to discuss." I sat down across from Tyler, back straight, hands in my lap, and I waited. Mom served dinner first. Rack of lamb, roasted potatoes, green beans. The meal she always cooked when something important was happening. The silverware was heavy. Crystal caught the light. Everything performed normalcy. When the plates were cleared, my father stood slowly, gripping the table edge for a moment before he got his balance. He looked around at all of us. "You know about my diagnosis. ALS doesn't slow down. The doctors tell me I'll need long-term care, daily assistance, eventually full-time support. We've talked about it as a family." "When?" I thought. "When did you talk about it without me?" "And we believe the best arrangement is for someone to move back home to help with my care." His eyes landed on me with the weight of someone who had already made a decision and was now simply announcing it. "Lacey, you're the obvious choice." There was that word. Obvious. Not preferred. Not "we'd love it if you were willing." Obvious. Like I was a logical conclusion, not a person. "You work from home mostly," he continued. "You don't have a husband. No kids. Your room is still there. It's time for you to come home and contribute to this family." Contribute. As if I'd been on some extended vacation. As if the past 2 years hadn't been the hardest of my life. Tyler shifted in his seat. "It makes sense, Lacey. I've got the baby coming and my workload right now is insane. I can't really be in 2 places at once." Brooke said nothing. Her hands stayed still on her belly, but she was watching me carefully. "Lacey." My mom's voice, soft and loaded. "Your father needs you. That's what family does." I looked at each of them in turn. My father with his trembling hand and his expectant eyes. My mother with her carefully arranged expression. My brother with his convenient excuses. And something inside me got very, very still. Before I answer, I said quietly, "I want to ask you something, Dad." He looked almost startled. People didn't ask Gary Calloway questions. They answered him. "When is the last time you asked how I was doing? When is the last time anyone in this room asked if I was still in remission? When is the last time any of you said my name without needing something from me?" Silence. My mother started, "Lacey, that's..." "I'm not done." My voice was calm. "Teddy, I'd done a lot of work to get to this kind of calm. Dad, do you know what my last scan showed? Do you even know if I'm still alive? Because for all you've been in touch with me, I could have died 2 years ago and you might not have found out for months." My father's face shifted. You had cancer, Lacey, I know that. Stage 3 breast cancer, I said. 6 months of chemotherapy. 34 infusion sessions. I lost 15 pounds. I lost my hair. I took out a $52,000 personal loan at 13% interest because you told me you couldn't help, right after you spent $65,000 on Tyler's wedding. Tyler's face had gone pale. I drove myself to every single appointment, I continued. Every one. Alone. I threw up alone. I cried alone. I called Mom at 2:30 in the morning during round 4 because I was so sick I couldn't stand up, and her phone rang 8 times with no answer because she was at a bridal shower. My mother's hand moved to her mouth. I'm not telling you this to punish you. I reached into my bag slowly on purpose and pulled out my phone. I'm telling you because you're sitting here talking about what I owe this family, and I need you to look at something first. I opened the folder. I placed the phone in the center of the table. These are my hospital visitor logs. Official documentation from Westfield General. Every chemo session I attended. And this column I pointed is the visitors column. Roll through it. Tell me what you see. My mom reached for the phone first. Her hands were shaking. She scrolled slowly, and I watched her face as she read. None. 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 34 lines. 34 dates. 1 column. None. I don't, she whispered. Why didn't you tell us how serious it was? I called Dad the day I was diagnosed. I was crying. I said I have stage 3 cancer and I'm terrified. And he said, I pulled up the screenshot and I quote, we can't deal with this right now. Tyler's got the wedding. Tyler grabbed the phone from our mom. He scrolled through the screenshots with a jaw that kept tightening and loosening like he was trying to find the words. His face had gone a grayish color that I'd never seen on him before. Dad. Tyler looked up. Did you know? Did you know it was this serious? My father didn't answer immediately. His trembling hand pressed flat against the table. The timing was, he started. There were considerations? I said quietly, throwing his own word back at him before he could hide behind it. The room went silent. Brooke cleared her throat. She'd been quiet for so long I'd almost forgotten she was there. Gary, she said, her voice careful and precise. Were you aware that she asked for financial help and you turned her down? Another silence. Dad. Tyler's voice had dropped. You told her to get a loan? While she was on chemo, my father looked down at his trembling hand. I stood slowly, smoothed down my blouse, adjusted my cashmere wrap. I looked at my family, really looked at them maybe for the last time, and I kept my voice even and clear. I'm not here to tear this family apart, I said. I'm here because I needed you all to look me in the eye and hear the truth before you ask me to give up my life for any of you. Because that's what you're asking. You're asking me to leave my job, my home, my life, everything I built alone while I was sick, and come back here and take care of a man who told me his son's wedding was more important than my survival. My mother was crying openly now. Not fake tears. Real ones. Lacey, she said, her voice cracking. Please. We're your family. I know what family means, Mom. I kept my voice gentle. Family means showing up at 2 in the morning when someone you love is sick and scared. Family means picking up the phone. Family means not having to take out a loan at 13% interest to survive cancer because the people who raised you were too busy planning a party. I looked at her directly. I know you love me. In whatever way you're able. But love without action is just a feeling that doesn't help anyone. I turned to my father. He had started crying. And I want to be honest with you about what that did to me because I think it's important. Seeing my father cry, this man who hadn't cried once in 30 years of life that I'd witnessed, it pulled at something deep and old in me. That little girl who had spent her whole childhood trying to earn his approval. That daughter who had called him from a hospital bench and begged him to just say the right thing. She was still in there somewhere. But she wasn't in charge anymore. "Lacey," he said, and his voice cracked. "I know I got it wrong. I know I failed you. But I'm scared. I'm losing control of my own body and I don't know how to do this, and you're my daughter and I need you. Please." I looked at him for a long moment. "Dad," I said. 2.5 years ago, I called you from a hallway in a medical building. I had just been told I might be dying. I was 25 years old and I was completely alone, and I called my father because that's what you're supposed to do when your world falls apart. I took one step closer. And you know what you said to me?" He didn't answer. "You said you couldn't deal with it right now." I let that settle. "So here's my answer, Dad. I can't deal with this right now." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. My mother made a sound that wasn't quite a gasp. Tyler's jaw dropped open. My father stared at me, tears still falling, as the full weight of those 4 words hit him. His own words coming back to him across 2.5 years, and I watched something shift in his face. Recognition. Devastation. I picked up my phone, tucked it into my bag, and walked out. I didn't run. I want you to know that. I walked. Past the family photos that ended at my high school years. Past the chandelier and the good china and the mahogany table. Past my mom, who reached for my arm and then let her hand fall when I didn't stop. "Lacey, wait." Tyler's voice from behind me. I didn't wait. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cool night air, and it hit me like a gift. That first breath of outside after being in that house. I walked down the brick pathway to my car, and I heard the door open behind me, heard footsteps, heard my mom's voice high and breaking. "Please, Lacey. We're your family. We love you." I stopped at my car door. I turned around. "Mom." I kept my voice as kind as I could because I didn't want to hurt her more than necessary. I just wanted her to understand. Family doesn't leave you alone to fight for your life. And love isn't something you only offer when you need something back. Her face crumpled. In the doorway behind her, I could see my father, Tyler's arm around him, watching me go. And Brooke, still in the doorway, one hand on her belly, watching with that same unreadable expression she'd had all evening. I got in my car. Started the engine. In the rearview mirror, they were still standing there as I pulled out of the driveway and onto the tree-lined street. I didn't look back. Cashmere wrap was soft against my neck. The road ahead was clear. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually breathe. 3 weeks later, my mom called. I answered because I was curious and because I hadn't fully closed the door. She told me Tyler had taken emergency leave from work to help with my dad's care. That his supervisor had already told him he was off the track for the promotion he'd been counting on. That Brooke was stressed, that they were fighting, that it was harder than anyone had thought it would be. "Brooke says she's starting to understand why you left," my mom said quietly. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel like I'd been proven right. I just felt tired and a little sad. "I hope Tyler figures it out," I said. "I really do." A month after that, my mom sent me a text. Just one message, but it was unlike anything she'd ever sent before. "Lacey, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I owe you a real apology. Not an excuse, not a reason, just an apology. I should have been there when you were sick. I should have stood up. I should have answered the phone. I didn't. And I have to carry that. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to come back. I just need you to know that I see it now. I see what we did. And I am so sorry." I read it 3 times. I sat with it for 2 days. Then I wrote back, "I appreciate you saying that. I'm not ready to talk yet. But I hear you." Her response was almost immediate. "Okay. Whenever you're ready. Or never. Whatever you need. Whatever you need." 4 words. Completely different from the 4 words that had broken everything 2 years before. 6 weeks later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. The envelope had my name in careful, uneven letters, the handwriting of someone whose hands no longer fully obeyed them. I carried it in my bag for 4 days before Jess finally said, "Just read it, Lacey. The waiting is worse than the letter." She was right. I opened it on a Wednesday night, sitting on my couch with a glass of wine and my houseplants as witnesses. "Dear Lacey, I'm not good at this. At apologizing. At admitting I was wrong. I've spent my whole life believing that strength meant never backing down. I understand now that what I called strength was just selfishness with better posture. I failed you. Not because I didn't know better, I did know better. I made a choice. I chose your brother's celebration over your survival. I will carry that for whatever time I have left, which the doctors now tell me is less than I'd hoped. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve other. I only wanted you to know that I see it. I see what I lost. I see the daughter I pushed away, and I see the woman she became without me, in spite of me. You are stronger than I ever was. I am sorry. Those words are not enough. But they are everything I have left. Your father, if you still allow me that, Gary." The handwriting wobbled across the page in a way that made my throat tight. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my dresser drawer. I didn't write back. But I didn't throw it away either. I'm cancer-free. 2 years and 8 months in remission. Dr. Caldwell uses the word thriving now, and I've decided to believe her. I got promoted to VP of Marketing. I have a team of 6, and I've discovered that I love helping people grow, probably because I know what it feels like to have to grow alone. I'm dating someone. His name is Marcus. He teaches middle school science, and he's terrible at parallel parking, and he's the most consistently kind person I've ever met. He knows everything, the cancer, the family, all of it. He doesn't try to fix me. He just shows up. That's it. He just shows up. Jess and I still video call twice a week. She's my person. My mom and I text. Carefully, slowly, like people learning to walk on ice. It's not close. It might never be close. But it's something. My dad's condition has progressed faster than expected. He has a part-time caregiver now, paid from savings, and Tyler visits twice a week. My dad has stopped asking me to come home. I think the letter was his way of saying goodbye to something he'd already lost. I haven't seen any of them since that Sunday dinner. I don't know if I ever will. And here's the honest truth, I've made peace with that. Not in a cold, hard way. More like, I've accepted that some wounds don't fully close, they just stop bleeding so much. I've accepted that I can wish my family had been different without waiting for them to become different before I let myself live. If you've made it this far, I want to talk to you directly. Maybe you're in the position I was in. Maybe you're in a waiting room or a treatment chair or a 3 a.m. bathroom. Maybe you're the person in your family who gets called when they need something and forgotten when they don't. Maybe you've been told in some form or another that your needs are inconvenient timing. Here's what I want you to know. You are allowed to set boundaries with people who hurt you, even if those people are your parents. Even if those people are sick. Even if it makes you the bad guy in their story. You are allowed to keep records. Screenshots, call logs, visitor documents. That's not pettiness, that's protecting your own truth when the people who wronged you try to rewrite history. You are allowed to build a family from the people who actually show up. Blood is just something you're born with. Family is a choice people make every single day. Forgiveness is a process. It's not a performance you put on for an audience. You don't owe anyone forgiveness on their timeline. And if it never fully comes, that's okay too. You're allowed to protect yourself. Those 4 words I said to my father, "I can't deal with this right now," weren't revenge. They were a mirror. I held his own words up and let him see what they looked like from the outside. Sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. You don't have to yell. You don't have to win an argument. You just have to tell the truth and let it land where it lands. I'm Lacey Calloway, 28 years old, cancer survivor. And the most important thing I've learned through all of it is this. You cannot pour yourself empty trying to fill a cup with a hole in the bottom. Set it down, walk away, and go find the people who want to fill yours. Take care of yourself. I mean that. Really, genuinely, take care of yourself. If this story hit home for you, drop a comment below and subscribe to my channel. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved? What happened? You're not alone in this, I promise you that.